different frequency production.
K-Set music.
Frequencies, they hit you frequently. They hit you frequently.
Not sure if it was the same one, but it just went tearing up that hill. It stayed on the road for a while, and I guess it must have gone up this little edge right here where the sign is. But if he's or she's tearing off like that, it means she wandered away from mommy and daddy or the area, but it could also mean that the adults are around here feeding as well. So about 50 meters down, right where the bend is, where I first saw her, she looked up and then went tearing ass down this way. Must have come up this way. Holy shit, I was warned about bears and other animals. And this is like 5 o'clock. This might be a town, or close to 5 o'clock, where they would be coming out for berries and stuff. Yes, I can do that. Maybe you need your guns too. Do you have your guns? I can use your guns. No, don't need the guns. I noticed fresh shit. That's definitely not a bear shit, but I noticed fresh shit when I was down in that part that I was trying to find the waterfalls but couldn't. That probably is some kind of obviously a smaller animal. Holy shit, it was the same. It was like a dusty gray brown bear. That's how I know it's a cub, because it was not full brown. I don't know if they have brown bears here or black bears, but I would think anyway, it was a cub. On all fours, it was at least 3 feet tall, so it was much bigger than me when it was standing up. Definitely something to be worried about, somewhat concerned about, because I do have cranberries in my muesli. Now, if they smell the sweet stuff, they might be coming looking for that, or would you like some of these nuts? Or would you like some of these nuts? Bag of nuts. I think they're more afraid of humans here because, as Bob's big boy yesterday, the ex-military dude, the big guy in the parking lot who's security, he he's the one that said, if you're going to the original place where I thought there was a falls yesterday, he said, yeah, and he showed me pictures of a steep drop off, and he said, yeah, you need a gun. There's no place to stay and there's no food up there, but you know, there are bears. And the other guy chimed in, and other animals. And I'm like what? They're like wild boar. I'm like, oh shit. I'm actually more afraid of wild boar because they get cornered, they will charge. That bear that I just saw, that cub, was more threatened by me than I have him or her. But I'm not gonna take the fucking chance. I mean, hell. It was huge and fluffy and cuddly looking, but yeah, no. stay upwind from it, and I've got another hour or so to get back to the house, but just as long as I don't get in between a cub and its mom or dad, then I'm good to go for the most part. Never saw Revenant, and I don't think I'm gonna waste 3 hours or whatever the fuck it is on that movie. But yeah, I don't plan on getting mauled by a bear. I was thinking about that actually about an hour and a half ago. One of my decisions to leave and not keep searching for this place, because I could technically be out here until 8 o'clock and the sun is still up. But I was thinking, yes, animals do kind of stir, and that's when I remembered, oh yeah, the bears. And it reminded me, a little Grunkle Shawn's story time, it reminded me of 2010, the last time I saw a bear up close and semi-personal. Andy Shaw and I, he was a science teacher at Manhattan Hunter Science High School, and I was an English teacher. We teamed up to go cross-country hiking and camping for about a month in 2010. I actually bought a car in 2009 just to do that, because you don't need a car in New York City. Unless you're stupid. Are you stupid? Anyway, so we're hiking through Teton National Park in Wyoming, right before we got to Noel Sanchez's house on the other side in Idaho. He used to have a house right on the other side of Jackson Hole, and he wasn't there at the time, but we were able to crash there because his roommate Rob was still living there. We are hiking our first day through Teton National Park, and you know, we had already talked to the rangers and we talked to others, and we had seen a ranger on the trail, you know, 2 or 3 hours into our hike, and he said, yes, I've recently seen a mama with 2 cubs, so be very careful, because if you get downwind from her, she will charge, protecting her cubs. If you get in between the cubs, you're dead, pretty much. Just kiss your ass goodbye. So as we're hiking, Andy's a pro hiker, and he was 100 meters ahead of me, maybe 200 meters ahead of me, and he had, I think he had both the tents at the time, because we swapped off. So he had the heavier pack or whatnot, but then he turns back to me, you know, doing the military, you know, eyes thing. I got my eyes, and he did that, and he pointed, and he put his, of course, he also put his finger over his lips, and it's just like, you know, be fucking quiet. When I'm 200 yards away, or 100 meters, 200 meters away from my partner, we're not having a conversation. We're just in our own private thoughts. We're having a great moment with nature. When I saw that, there were still trees blocking, or bushes blocking my view, so he was there quietly walking kind of out in the open, and I went around the bend, and I see the mama bear and the baby bear, and of course you're not stopping to ogle, you're not stopping to like, wow, let me take a photo of that, let me record this. You're just like, we are on their territory. I cherish your space. So I know I'm not going to do anything to jeopardize, as if I can, jeopardize being a threat or seeing me as a threat to you and your cubs. So we just quietly, as quickly as possible, but careful not to like step on any twigs, or you know, you're almost being very stealthy because you don't want any attention being drawn to you. And you glance over every once in a while at your own risk, well, just to make sure the fucker's not chasing after you. Not that you could do anything about that anyhow. I don't know, go watch Revenant. I don't think it worked for him. We you know, get through another 200 meters, and fortunately the wind was blowing, we were upwind from them, so they couldn't smell us, and she never looked over in our direction that I know of. Just was down eating the berries, and the cub, we only saw one cub, or at least I only saw one cub. Maybe the 2 cubs were together, but So, and maybe it was just a different mama bear, because the ranger did say that at least one mama bear had 3 cubs, or 2 or 3 cubs, and the other one might have had her 1 cub as well. So, but yeah, you're in their territory. And after that, it was like, holy shit, we could be running into more bears. And we were camping out. And what you do in those situations as well with your food, like I mentioned how I have cranberries, which they can smell. Bag of nuts! Bags of nuts, and want to come after because it's a sweet tasting treat to them. Something they would be on their normal diet, whatever berries that grow here in the wild, is you put all your food, what they call, in a bear bucket. And back when I was camping 40 years ago, we'd put that in the metal bucket that we used to either to get water from the well or water from the river. And you put all your food in that bucket. You'd wrap that bucket in the rope and string that up in between 2 trees, 30, 40 feet up above the ground. You make sure you go to bed, you're not eating any crackers, you don't have any chocolate, you don't have anything sweet, no peanut butter, just jelly sandwiches right before you go to bed. Bag of nuts. Make sure you brush your teeth. And even that, sometimes they like the smell of the toothpaste. But yeah, long story short, you wrap your shit up tight. These nuts! After, and even if they do go after the food, if they smell something that wasn't wrapped up tightly, bags of nuts, you can hear them banging on the pail before anything else, and they'll go after the pail. They'll get that. They might rip into the food if they can get that down, if they smell the stuff. But they're not going to go in your tent. Like I've heard other people have bears walk right through their campsites and right through and right out, and because they can't smell anything worth going after in the tents. They're not going to fuck with the tents or the people if they don't need to. After Andy left, about 2 weeks later, he left and he went off to meet up with his girlfriend in Georgia, and then they flew to Turkey for a wedding or something. I was in, after Andy left, I was in Bryce Canyon by myself hiking for a couple of days, and the bear bag that they had for me was an actual cooler, but it's made out of metal, and you've got a lock, and it's just on the ground, but you do the same thing. You wrap all your food up really well, and you put it inside the bear box, and then you definitely don't put your tent anywhere near where the bear box is. So this is a really heavy metal safe, and you put your food in there. It's pretty large, like a foot locker, so you can put a lot of food in there if you had 5 people, 10 people camping out, and you want to put, like I said, anything that you brought. If you're hiking for 5 days, you've got snacks for 5 days, because it's the kind of thing where you don't have a tienda or a grocery store or any kind of place along the way to buy more stuff. You're out in nature for 3 or 4 days hiking. I only stayed out for a couple of days. I didn't stay too far in because the weather was supposed to get bad, and I'm hiking alone again, and it's just you don't go too far crazy on your own unless you've got really good survival skills. Bag of nuts. Bag of nuts. And you've got phones back then. I don't know, 2010 might have had GPS, but I had a flip phone back then, so I don't think it was any kind of nice GPS deal. Bags of nuts. These nuts. Bag of nuts. Hey, curious, would you like some of these nuts? Or would you like some of these nuts?